just going to go straight to the point because I think you're going to want to hear from Detective Fields more than anything else. The technology that we have today, actually in this case, the technology that evolved in 2005 led to a palm print to help this detective work with the other detectives to identify this individual. 7 cases. The serial rapist was responsible for 7 cases, 3 in Orlando, 4 in the Volusia County area, and all of those victims are with us today, and meaning they're still here on Earth, they're still alive. And with the exception of one who is living outside of this country, they're all wanting to see justice done for this individual who committed this heinous crime against them. So the detective will talk about some of the cases that we work here, mainly in the east side of Orlando. Through the process, I learned that back then, one of our then person who retires as a lieutenant, Debbie Driscoll was the one who worked the cases, was able to put together, there were some consistencies, and one crime analyst or crime scene investigator had the presence of mind to capture a palm print that back then could not be used, but years later proved to be the key to identify this person that we've been looking for a very long time. So with that said, I know that you will probably have additional questions that you can ask. I'll turn it over to the sheriff, and then the PILs will come up again and introduce Detective Fields.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. In my 16 years here as the sheriff and the police chief, OPD does never disappoint me when they get their hands on a tough assignment, and this one was a tough assignment. You're looking at a serial rapist, you're looking at a predator, you're looking at a guy who stole from these women. He stole their sense of self-being when he committed these horrible, horrible acts. And like a coward and a scumbag that he is, he's disappeared. So I want to share with you from our end what we were looking at. On January 16th, 1992, a female was in her apartment. When she walked into her bedroom, she was grabbed from behind, forced on the bed, and sexually assaulted, as the male talked about threatening to kill her during the whole process. In July 20th, 1993, a female woke up in her bedroom around 5 a.m. and saw the suspect naked crawling out of her bedroom. She screamed, he ran away. But when she went into the living room to investigate, he jumped out from behind the wall, forced her back into the bedroom where he sexually assaulted her. And then on May 11th, 1998, a 20-year-old female was walking on the beach when she was knocked to the ground and at rape point was sexually assaulted. As we knew, and then there's another job, and it's in Daytona Beach that matches similarly. And in this case has been cold for us until we got the phone call from Detective Fields. And I think you really have to see the great work that was done on this. And now we have to apprehend this guy. And the Sheriff's Office, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, is offering a $25,000 reward for any information that leads to his arrest. You don't have to do anything else. Pick up the phone, let us know where he's at, so we can work with OPD and bring this scumbag to justice. We owe it to these women.
And now you will hear from lead detective Michael Fields.
Good afternoon, my name is Michael Fields, M-I-C-H-A-E-L-F-I-E-L-D-S. In December of 2018, the Orlando Police Department examined this case and believed that the use of forensic genetic genealogy could benefit this case. Because since June of 2018, the investigative genetic genealogy has rapidly emerged as a highly effective tool in using DNA to identify unknown persons, whether they are unidentified bodies or suspects in crimes. So we took the use of traditional genealogy, combined it with the use of technology, and combined it together to form what is known as investigative genetic genealogy. On June 17th of 1988, the city of Orlando responded to a call on the east side of town for a woman who was sexually battered. This courageous woman survived a 20-minute ordeal of being raped at knife point by the suspect. On July 30th of 1988, the city of Orlando responded to an additional call for service for a woman who, again, was held captive and raped and sexually battered multiple times. And on February 16th of 1989, the Orlando Police Department responded to our third call for a sexually battered incident. in the city of Orlando. In 2018, I started the case. I began to work on it. I used the use of our forensic genetic genealogy, but I also wanted to start from the beginning. We sent off the latent prints back to 80's, and if you can think about 1988, there was no use of the palm prints in the use of crime solving. It wasn't until 2005 that the use of palm prints became a tool for us to use. So when we resubmitted those palm prints, it came back as a hit for Leslie LaGrada. We were able to take that information and focus in on his family and use the genetic genealogy to eliminate everyone else in his immediate family by the use of search warrants, consent, and other means to get the DNA from family members to show that the only person that could have done this heinous crime was Leslie LaGrada. And then during the investigation, we learned in 2010 he was arrested in Volusia County for resisting an officer with violence. Part of the resolution of his case was to submit his DNA into the database. When he learned that that was going to happen, this feckless coward took $22,000 out of his bank account and fled. The last thing he told one of his relatives is, "The police are going to get my DNA, I need to leave town. I'm going to go to prison." So he fled. We were able to take his family's DNA and use YSTR testing to prove that it was him, and the use of genetic genealogy. Any questions?
So, do we have any idea where this guy might be? Any other trails? Is he just paying everything in cash so we couldn't find him?
The U.S. Marshals have been trying to locate this this defendant for about 1.5 years now, and we do not have any leads as to where he is. There's a possibility he could have left the country, but there's no evidence to show that he has left the country. But we believe that is a possibility.
When is the last time he was seen? Was that in 2010 when he was arrested?
The last time, our investigation showed the last time he was seen was in 2010 when he told his brother, "I have to leave town, I'm going to go to prison."
Can you clarify with the palm print? So in 2005, there was a tool that was available that was able to identify the palm print. How did
Yes.
you guys have his palm print at that point?
We've been using fingerprints since, yes, we've been using fingerprints since 1902, but it's only been the fingerprints. The use of palm prints didn't come across in the criminal world until 2005. So our CSIs were able, back in the 1980s, even though they knew that there was no system to gather that palm print and to use it, they gathered it anyway, which was phenomenal. And now, because they had the forethought to grab that palm print from the window that he used to force his way inside the victim's apartment, that palm print came back as a match to him.
So was there something to connect the dots that were going off in Volusia County in 2010 saying,
Well,
hey, this guy's...
real quick, he's not giving credit to himself. He was working a cold case that you covered, and it was the victim from our homicide that was identified through the process that you described earlier. And then he began to focus on another case, which was this one, and he began to look at the files as a cold case, and he saw the palm print, and he requested for that palm print to be processed, and that led to identifying the individual.
So that was in 2018 that the palm print was actually connected to this guy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're able to submit that palm print to the DNA database or the genealogy?
No, I'm sorry. The palm print is separate. It's FBI AFIS, Automatic Fingerprint Index System. So yes, it went into a separate database, a fingerprint database.
The reading of the palm print?
Yes.
And then that matched up with?
Yes, it was just another tool. They're completely separate, but we had thought that every I was dotted and every T was crossed. Just like any investigation, we wanted to make sure again that every I was dotted and every T was crossed, and that's when we realized that technology back in 1988 did not allow for a palm print. The technology at the time that we looked at it now said that we could use that technology.
So the original warrant for this guy was last year. What's since then that you've connected him to these 6 other cases?
No, the warrant had come out. We were trying to locate him on our own, and now we are asking for the public's help.
Any indication that there could be other victims out there aside from these 7 cases that you've identified?
There is no doubt in my mind there are additional victims or survivors out there. These are the only ones that have been connected through science.
Do we know anything about this man? Is he live in Orlando? Was he from Orlando? Did he work anywhere particular? I don't know where there were a lot of women. I'm just trying to figure out what is his background.
Leslie Lagrada lived in the Volusia County. He owned a home out in Volusia County. He had a girlfriend who lived on the east side of town. That is the nexus, we believe, to why he was on the east side of town. But he lived, worked in Volusia County.
Do you think that he had gone dormant between that 10-year period, or do you think possibly he hid in some other area that we just don't know about?
I don't think that I don't know the answer to that.
What about the leads that you have been receiving? Have any of them been anything of any value as far as where he could possibly be?
We have had 0 leads as to his whereabouts as of right now. That is why we are asking for anyone who has any information to please contact the Orlando Police Department, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office, or Crime Line.
I saw that he had a stalking charge in his past back in the 80s. Was there anything else in his past that would have given a hint that this guy might have been up to a little bit more?
In hindsight, yes, it's easy to look back and see a pattern. When he was arrested for the resisting with violence, he was actually outside of a woman's window. And the officers arrived, saw him, chased him. He wanted to get away. He fought the officers to try to get away. So, yes, in hindsight, it's easy to look back and see a pattern of his creepy affairs.
At the time, and that happened in 2010 in Volusia County, when he was arrested for that incident, resisting with violence from officers, was the connection hadn't been made yet, or had it?
It had not been made. There was at that point, his DNA was not in the database. One of the resolutions to his case was, we're going to let you out, you're going to have this amount of probation, and you had to submit your DNA to the database. And he knew right then and there that he was going to be in a large amount of trouble. And he told his family member, I'm going to go to prison, I need to leave town.
If you have to sum up his MO, I know one of the, I think it was Sheriff, mentioned that knife-point battery in the bedroom, et cetera, was it the same for Orlando? How would you sum up his MO? And is everything very similar?
There is absolutely a pattern of his sexual batteries. He preyed on women who were alone. He preyed at women who were home alone between the hours of midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning. And there are some other patterns which we choose to withhold as of right now until trial. But there are some other patterns there.
Did his victims look similar?
With the exception of being young and white, that's the only similarities that I'm aware of.
And when you contacted these women and said, hey, we think we've got this guy, it's been decades, what was the response that you got?
I know that the detectives from the sheriff's office contacted their victims. I can't speak for those, but the 3 victims I contacted were very shocked and surprised. They had already moved on and thought that this was never going to get solved. And although it drummed up old feelings, they were very happy to know that we knew the identity of the suspect and we were trying to actively search him out.
But they got to have been fearful too, knowing that he's still out there somewhere.
I don't think that I would be able to answer that question. I think it's obvious to think that, but I did not ask that.
And when you identified him in 2018 and the search started, it's been 3 years since you've been searching for him. What's prompting this press conference today? Is it that people have not come forward with his whereabouts?
The U.S. Marshals has come to a dead end. They are unable to locate him. We were hoping to locate him and bring him to justice. So now we're at the point where we need the public's help to try to locate him.
So you do suspect he's left the state?
I definitely believe he has left the state of Florida and possibly even the United States.
So I'll add a few more comments and I'll let the sheriff wrap it up. But another point to make a note of is the fact that we're highlighting the importance of how science, technology, and great detective work is leading to solving some of these cases and to what you said a few minutes ago that are decades old, right? So this is just the beginning of greater things to come when it comes to bringing justice to these victims that deserve for these individuals to be not only caught but held accountable for their actions. So the message should be clear for anyone who has engaged or has even thought about engaging in that type of violence, that the technology is moving in a direction where it's very favorable for law enforcement to solve these crimes. So if anyone out there has any information, please share it. There's got to be someone who knows a little bit about this individual, especially after now his name and picture has been shared. And even if it's something that they are just wondering whether it would be useful or not, come forward, report it. And the sheriff has just mentioned a very generous reward for someone who could lead us to the apprehension of this guy. Sure.
I just want to reiterate that this was done, as the chief said, with great technology, but also great police work. You know, and this isn't the first time in my career OPD has done something for me in Volusia County or in as the police chief in Daytona. You can't outrun your DNA, and that's what the chief's telling you. You can't outrun it. And you have men and women that are working all the time to try to bring closure to these victims, because we have lots of DNA, we have lots of cases like this, but it takes great cops to do their job coupled with technology to come after this guy. And again, $25,000. You don't have to testify or do anything. Tell us where to find him and let these guys, these men and women, do their job. Thank you.
Is Legrano's family helping? Are they cooperating with law enforcement in terms of helping to apprehend him or find him?
He has 7 siblings, some of which were very helpful, some of which were not very helpful, which is why we had to execute search warrants to get their DNA. But some were very helpful and felt very saddened for the survivors.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
In Spanish,
He
in
is
Spanish.
60 and not 61, right?
I'm sorry.
He is 60 and not 61.
No hace un resumen en español, por favor.
¿Cómo no? Perdón. So, lo que queríamos dejar saber hoy es que esta persona ha sido identificada como la persona responsable por las violaciones de 7 mujeres aquí en el condado de Orange y en la ciudad de Orlando.
Streaming live on WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's JB Buno.
Get a good look at this image, folks. Leslie Regrata, believed to be the prime suspect in a string of serial sexual abuse cases and rape incidents from the 80s and 90s terrorizing Central Florida. DNA technology pointing to him being the prime suspect. With that police announcement coming in just a moment ago of a $25,000 reward for information that leads to Legrata's whereabouts. Good afternoon, folks. JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. We just heard from Orlando and Volusia County officials, law enforcement officials, on now the search for Leslie Regrata. You've heard that they have now exhausted all possible avenues to try to get to where Legrata might be through detective work. They need the public's help. You heard there a public cry, a cry for help from the public to get this image out on social media, clicking on the share button. In fact, why don't we do that? Why don't we activate shared help on the bottom of your screen? You can still make a really big difference here by sharing out this image. Now, it was interesting there at the end to hear the detective on the case talk about how he's not so sure that Legrata is in Florida or perhaps even in the United States. Now, if he did flee, if he decided to flee to outside of Florida, he could be somewhere in the continental U.S. He could be somewhere beyond if he tried to get to perhaps Canada or Mexico or one of the other countries that we have in our section of the world. But this is now the last time that he was seen was 2010. That's 11 years ago. This picture on the right side of your screen is believed to be the last known photo of him, perhaps from that arrest in 2010. He was arrested in 2010. I'm just going to go into my reporter notes here. He was arrested by Daytona Beach police in 2010 in Volusia County. He was charged with resisting arrest using violence. And at the time, he was forced to provide a DNA sample. You heard there from the detectives on the case saying that upon giving his DNA sample, he got very worried that he was going to be going to prison once they learned through working that DNA evidence that he was connected to a string of sexual abuse and rape incidents that occurred in the late 80s and early 90s. Again, 7 victims that they know about. 3 sexual battery crimes from 1988 to 1989, 4 rape incidents from 1992 to 1998. So 7 victims, and all but 1 are still alive. So 6 women out there who deserve justice. It could come in the form of discovering the whereabouts of, again, 61-year-old Leslie LaGrotta on the right side of your screen. Again, last seen in Volusia County about 11 years ago. So a $25,000 reward offered if you or someone that you know recognizes him and is able to offer his current whereabouts. Let's get to the hashtag HeyJB questions and comments that have come in over the course of the press conference, and we'll try to catch up and get to the ones that are coming in now. Jackie Cox, hashtag HeyJB, does he have family that might know of his whereabouts, maybe a wife at the time? We heard there in the press conference that he did have a girlfriend, I believe they said East Volusia County, or on the east side of town as they put it. And he does have 7 siblings, some of which cooperating, some that have been not so helpful, according to officials. So whether or not the family is likely unable to provide anything that would lead to LaGrotta's whereabouts because they have exhausted all avenues of their detective work, they are really now depending on the public, on you, wherever you're watching from, on members of the public, of course, on the public at large, to track down LaGrotta, wherever he may be. And the evidence, based on the press conference, it seems to be DNA evidence that appears to be pretty concrete, that they have the man that they were looking for this string of sexual assaults in the 80s and the 90s. Kelly Dragonborn on YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, says this guy is long gone. Let's point out the obvious. So 11 years, a very long time for someone to just vanish and disappear. And you could be anywhere in 11 years. You may not even be alive anymore after 11 years. So I believe he's in his 60s. I heard there might have been a DOB discrepancy in the press conference, but everything I've heard in the reports has been 61 years old. So Leslie LaGrotta, police are hoping that he's not long gone, and police are hoping that he's somewhere in the U.S., that he can be identified, located, and eventually apprehended by authorities here in the United States. I've seen a lot of this name in our comment section. Brian Felt, hashtag HeyJB. Grady Judd will get him. Dude's relentless. You know, interesting, Grady being just a few counties over. Grady Judd, of course, the Polk County Sheriff, very popular Polk County Sheriff, known for his very interesting press conferences where it's pretty much you never know what you're going to get from Grady other than just ice-cold truth from Grady as far as just being brutally honest with people. So Grady, it's not within his jurisdiction. Of course, if the case led to Polk County in any which way, shape, or form, yes, Grady Judd, of course, would be very much involved in trying to organize his detectives and his deputies in finding LaGrotta. But Grady is just a few counties over. But I'll tell you what, Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood that you heard from there, also from what I have covered here in Florida, a relatively popular sheriff here in the Sunshine State. Wanda Refner from YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, do you think he left the country? It doesn't matter what I think, it matters what the detectives think, and you heard the lead detective on the case there at the end of the press conference say he might have left the state of Florida, and he might have left the U.S. entirely. And remember, he did, according to detectives, LaGrotta here expressed to his brother concern that upon them having his DNA evidence that they were going to track him down. So he was According to the brother who talked to detectives, he was trying to get out, and he knew that that police were going to locate him if he didn't make a hasty exit. So somebody who has done some terrible, terrible things, some acts of pure evil, you would imagine, if I'll tell you what, if he was really that sure that they had his DNA and that he had left enough DNA evidence at previous scenes of crimes that he had committed, I would imagine he was thinking about making a very, very quick exit, and an exit that would get him off the radar of United States law enforcement. Alexander Wilkeson, hey, JB, why did they allow him to work free if he serves prison sentences before? Why did they let him go free if they knew he was a danger to the American public? This is an interesting question. Again, he was arrested and charged with resisting arrest with or using violence by Daytona Beach police in 2010. How was he able to escape? I don't know if that was specifically articulated in this press conference, but he could have been out on bond. He could have been out on bail. He could have been released on his own recognizance, though it all depends, of course, on that particular arrest out of Daytona Beach. And I don't have the information, but I think that there's some frustration that somebody who had committed so many atrocities, according to police, was able to walk away and get away as a free man. Tomaletta Short, hashtag, here it is again, hashtag HJB. Tell them to put Grady Judd on the case. He goes and gets them all the way, excuse me, in California. I have not seen a Grady Judd press conference in California, but that would be the day. Grady Judd in front of the Hollywood sign announcing the arrest of somebody that his office was pursuing. Looking for some more hashtag KJB questions and comments. We won't be on live too much longer. Got a lot to get to on WFLA.com, the WFLA app here. Let's get to the next few comments that just came in. Tom Letta, thanks for the comment. Danny Whitman, hashtag AJB. He looks like your brother or cousin. He does? Yeah. Give him up already. Well, yeah. Well, I don't. Regardless of what he looks like, $25,000 is a good chunk of change that's being offered. So they're hoping that the $25,000 reward will entice someone to come forward, or maybe just it helps get the word out on social media. Hey, listen, there are people out there that bounty hunters and such that will look for cases and try to solve cases based on the rewards that are out there. $25,000 is a nice chunk of change. If somebody recognizes him, regardless of who he looks like, if anybody recognizes him, again, they're looking at a potential sizable monetary reward. Charlene Hicks Hopkins, hashtag KGB. Why so long of a wait? Yeah, 11 years old. The DNA technology is what they keep pointing to as to where we are at this point in time with this particular investigation. But yeah, 11 years is a long time, and they have been for some time now exhausting their resources and looking for Leslie Lagrada, but to no avail. To no avail. I was wondering that as well, though, Charlene. The timing of it all. Committing atrocities in the 80s and 90s, and living out your adult life and getting all the way through till 2010 before you make another mistake and you are arrested, and then you give a DNA sample, and then you flee. I mean, that's a long, very, very long amount of time for someone to be out there and free after, if he, of course, did commit these terrible atrocities. Stephanie Ellsworth, hashtag AJB. Has any of his family or friends heard from him in the past couple of years? Does law enforcement even know if he's still alive? I would imagine that if there was any contact, technology since the 80s and 90s has really developed. So if a family member, if they were able to subpoena the phone records of family members, and if they were able to look, not saying that they have been able to, but if, depending on how far reaching the investigation is, if you're able to look at phone records, and if there's a particular one of his seven siblings that has, let's say, a regular contact out of a country like Mexico. That's something that they would explore and try to determine whether or not that there's any contact between a member of the family and between, Lagrada somewhere out there. But right now, let me make this clear again. It takes a lot for law enforcement to come up there to the podium and say, we have been pursuing this and we don't have any leads right now. That's to go up there to the podium and say we've exhausted all of our current leads and we're now turning to the public for help. It takes a lot to be able to come forward in a public press conference like that and say that. So that really means that they have exhausted all avenues of as far as their investigative leads. They need the public. They need the public to step up. That's why we're live. That's why you see the Share to Help banner on the bottom of your screen, that you can help out. It's really not just law enforcement. It's not just law enforcement. You're also helping out these 7 victims, 6 of them alive, all said to be, and again from my notes here, they were women who were alone, young white females. There was a pattern of sexual battery, one of them occurring on a beach. It's pretty brazen to do, just on a beach in the middle of the night, but most of the attacks, if not all the attacks, according to the detective, was between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And also very chilling when you hear the detective say, "There's no." The quotes were the exact words were, "No doubt in my mind that there's more victims beyond the 7." So that's where we are. Maybe 1 or 2 final questions and comments. Tomaletta, thank you, saying that there isn't much of a resemblance. Yeah, Edith, I want to bring up Edith's comment. Edith brings up an outstanding point. Hi there to you, Edith. Hashtag JB. He's had 11 years to change his appearance, eye color, under the knife, etc. You don't even need to, you can go under the knife for surgery, but eye color, yeah, you can wear different color contact lenses, but that's not necessarily sure that somebody who is looking to elude authorities would wear contact lenses each and every day, just because there are only so many different eye colors. You could be hazel, blue eyes, brown eyes, green eyes. It's usually, if you're trying to, what we have seen in previous cases, when someone is trying to elude authorities, they will do more drastic things like changing your hair. Hair is a pretty big. Yes, I would imagine you could go under the knife to drastically change your appearance. But you know what the biggest factor in your appearance changing is just time. 11 years is a long time, and your skin tone will change sometimes over that time. Of course, you will add wrinkles. There's the natural aging effects for the human body. So that's probably the biggest change that you would see. Could he be walking around with blonde or white hair? Yeah, white hair, maybe because he dyed it, or maybe because he just naturally now has white hair, being 61 or in his 60s, 61 years old. So could have shaved his head, and then it becomes a much different appearance, drastically different appearance. So, but Edith, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing it up. Girly Gamer, hashtag JB on YouTube, please provide description like height, eye color, type of body build, tattoos. This is really important, is it not? I'm glad you brought that up as well, Girly Gamer, because I don't have that information right now. We're going to try to get that information from Orlando Police and from the Volusia County Sheriff's Office. Those particular pieces of like height is important. Build, identifying characteristics, birthmarks or tattoos. These are all really important. So I will tweet that. If I see any of that, I'll tweet this out. I'll tweet it out. Mary Tanner on YouTube, hashtag HeyJB, is he still alive? I would imagine that if you're the detectives on this case, you want him to be alive so that he can be brought to justice. If he's deceased, that means that from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now the year is 2021. That's 4 or so decades, roughly 3 to 4 decades that you have lived as a free man after committing some really evil, heinous acts that, again, heinous acts that he has been accused of, and it's suggested that he is the prime suspect because of DNA evidence, according to authorities here. So, yes, innocent until proven guilty. Very important to point that out. But they say that you can't outrun your DNA, is what Mike Chitwood said there. So, yeah, seeing a lot of your comments in, and D Wazoo, hashtag AJB, what year? This is believed to be the 2010 Daytona Beach mugshot. That's what I had from in my notes. This was sent to us under the belief that this was the 2010 Daytona Beach mugshot, which would put him at roughly the age of 50 here. 50? Unless this is from a prior arrest, and then this is but then there's even a larger gap between that arrest, if there is a previous arrest. You heard about his potential history with stalking as well. So we'll try to get some more information. This is a story that is developing today. So that's why a lot of these details are just now coming out. And some of your questions, this is what we do with interactive journalism here on WFLA Now. You're asking incredibly pertinent, poignant questions when it comes to this story. More on his description, more on where this photo was taken and what year it was taken. And what does the family know, and what has the family said, and where should we be looking, and where should... All of these questions are very, very pertinent. And we'll try to continue to report on this story to get those questions answered. I'm in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. This is the other side of Florida. So if you look at a map, we're in Hillsborough County right now. I'm in Hillsborough County. That's Tampa, on the Gulf Coast side of Florida. So if you think of the peninsula, it's on the west side of the peninsula. Volusia County all the way out to the east. A couple hour, maybe 3 to 4 hour drive, depending on traffic. Out to Daytona Beach. Daytona, of course, known for NASCAR and for racing. Daytona Beach is where, of course, Volusia County is located, and this is where he is said to have called home before he fled, before authorities say that he was trying to elude police for these crimes, and the knowledge that they had DNA evidence was enough to, or the knowledge that they had his DNA sample was enough to cause him to say, you know what? It's time to get out of town. All right, folks, JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be tweeting out additional details on the story as they become available. WFLAJB on Twitter, but you can also go to all that information. We're going to update the story for you on WFLA.com and the WFLA app. We're going to leave this up one last time. Share to help as we put out the message from police and the Sheriff's Office of Volusia County that they are looking for 61-year-old Leslie Lagrada, the prime suspect in a string of serial sexual abuse and rape incidents that, quote-unquote, terrorized Central Florida in the 80s and 90s. We'll leave this up for a few more minutes, give you the opportunity to share, tweet, put out there on YouTube as well. Do what you can. The more that we expose this picture out there to different sections of the country and sections of the world, the more of a chance that somebody will recognize him. And yeah, if it's here in the United States, or depending on where you are, getting that $25,000 reward for, again, offering information that leads to the whereabouts of the prime suspect in these serial rapes from the 80s and 90s, 61-year-old Leslie Lagrada. I'm JB Buno, everybody. The latest on WFLA.com and the WFLA app.